Okay, so the Andromedans tell you that the Alpha Draconians are here now. Where?
There are 1,833 of them that have been living underground between 100 and 200 miles beneath the surface. They've been here, some of them have been here a long, long time. They have lifespans that are thousands of years. They're carnivorous. They're not friendly to mankind, at least the ones that are here.
Are you saying carnivorous, they eat humans?
Yes. And they won't eat a dead human. It has to be alive at the time of the killing. Their preference is children. And we've been told, you shouldn't talk about that. There are other people say, well, you better not talk about the reptilians. Well, bull. Why not? According to the Andromedans, they're responsible for 31,712 children disappearing in the last 25 years from the United States. These children were food. And I'm supposed to just shut up and not say anything about it because people don't want to hear it? That's tough. That's tough. Westchester County, in the last 5 years, 3,000 children in the Westchester County, New York, have vanished without a trace. Where are they going? Why are we allowing this to happen? And why should people stay in denial about it?
Now, how are they able to do this? How are they able to? How are they able to? How are they able to do it? How are they able to come up out of this from underground and do it, or do they have?
There are tunneling systems everywhere. They're being helped by the Greys, and also there are groups within the higher echelon that are actually helping them acquire this.
So human beings are abducting the kids and getting them to the Greys, who in turn give them to the Alpha Draconians?
That's right. That's part of the deal. They won't come up as long as we feed them down there. You understand? It's about human beings selling themselves out. The echelon attitude here, the needs of the few outweigh the needs of humanity. And sorry, that just isn't right. But it's going to have to be humanity that's going to rise up and take the stand. You're just going to have to turn off your televisions. They're going to have to get in their car. They're going to have to fire everybody in Washington, D.C. that knows and does nothing. And they're going to have to do something. This apathy's got to end. Otherwise, the way we live is going to end. Period. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I'm not coming from a fear space. I'm really quite angry about the apathy and the fact that, when people give lectures and try to tell this, people want to stand up and fight with them. Look at what's happening around us. The indications are everywhere. Everywhere. The truth is now an obscure thing. The lie is the norm. There's something wrong here. What's wrong with this picture? Sorry, I'm getting crazy.
No, you're not. You're expressing frustration, I think. Why, aside from the carnivorous aspect to the Alpha Draconians, why else are they dangerous to humanity?
Because they don't like us.
And what are they willing to do with humanity?
Eat us. There's no need for us. I mean, look at where we are. Look at us right now as a civilization, as a society. Okay? They don't need anything. They have all this technology that they want. We can't really offer them except maybe do some work for them. But they don't need all of us to work for them. They don't respect human life in any way whatsoever. And this goes back to Lyra, to where the original war started. When they got to Lyra originally, they saw this human race that was plentiful in food, that could grow food, that could do all of these agricultural things. And mankind on a whole is really agricultural. We really, as a race, if we were left alone, would be nurturing the earth. We would be living in tribal communities like the Native American Indians did. That's really our essence, our nature, I'm sorry. That's really our nature, our essence. And, the cities and the culture that we're living in now has totally cut us off from the land, from what our real essence is, which is nature. And, we're starting to feed off each other now. It's like so bizarre. It's like when I see the Andromedans or when I've been exposed to the Pleiadians, when I see how they live and they teach and they live with each other and they respect each other, and I come here It's like, it reminds me of that sentence that Abraham Lincoln, that quote that Abraham Lincoln once said. If you are above the earth looking down, you could be an atheist. But when I'm on the earth looking up and seeing the heavens, I know there's a God. It's like the duality. And I think enough of us, more of us, really need to start taking the perspective that what we're doing here isn't right. We need to get in touch with what's out there, with just the whole idea that, God, how did we get here? What makes me be here? As opposed to going home after work, turning on TV, watching 3 hours of television, going to bed, getting up the next morning, going to work, and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, like robots. Throw the televisions away. Just throw them away.
Okay, what are the physical characteristics of the Alpha Draconians? What do they look like?
I don't have that. Maybe it's in the car. They're ugly. I mean, they think we're ugly, too. And I guess it's all a matter of perspective and belief system. In my belief system, and I'm only taking responsibility for me, they're ugly. They're anywhere from 7 to 22 feet tall. They can weigh up to 1,800 pounds. They're reptilian. The ones that have stubby tails, if you see one that has no tail, he's of the warrior class, or the worker class. The longer the tail, the higher their rank. When you see one with long tails, with winged appendages, he's considered royalty. Whenever you see one, you ought to just run like hell. You shouldn't approach it. You shouldn't provoke it. Just get the hell out of its way. Just get out of its way. Just run. There is a way to kill them. If you can't cut off their head, they have two hearts. There's one here, underneath this armpit, and one here. Or, if you can't get to that area and you need to slow it down, you need to hit it right above its groin area. It has a very large liver. You need to wound it there to slow it down. It is not something where man-to-man combat you're going to be able to deal with, because they apparently have the strength of 12, 15 men. They're incredibly quick. They're incredibly psychic. They know what you're going to do before you do it. If they get here in mass, we got real problems. Real problems.
What do the Andromedans advise human beings to do if they encounter an Alpha Draconian?
To leave. You leave its space. Get away. To get away.
What if they can't?
Then they can't.
And if they can't?
They'll usually be killed.
And what have the Andromedans spoken in any detail about what a human being should do if they are in that position? For karmic purposes?
Look, that's not karmic at all. All this metaphysical stuff, where you chose to be here. A lot of, in some situations that's true. When you're creating your reality and in your space. But when you're being invaded, that's not karma. That's a violation of free will.
If your free will is being violated, Alex, what should you do?
You should ask for help.
Okay.
Ask for help. Put a call up to God. Put a call up to heaven. Put a call to the Andromedans, the Pleiadians, whomever. Just put a call up and deal with it. I don't know. That's just the nature of the beast. They don't like us. We're considered a food source for them. We're a food source for the Greys, but in an entirely different way.
Have they taught us to be carnivorous through the belief systems? Have they taught us to eat meat and eat flesh?
Well, it lowers the body's vibration. It lowers the body's vibration.
So,
if our body vibrated at a higher length, we would spiritually be evolving regardless of what our religions were teaching us. And they can't have that. They can't have us being free. They can't have us not being in control, because then we're responsible for ourselves.
So as we move away from eating meat and more towards vegetarianism, we begin to raise our vibrational level and break this cycle.
It helps. Not everybody has to stop eating meat. It's not an absolute requirement. It certainly helps. But some people's belief systems will be that they just need a piece of meat. And for whatever their reasons are, that's fine. If you want to eat meat, that's fine. But you know what? Feed your mind. Feed your mind with spirit, with questions about existence, about what it is we're doing here, why we're here, what the hell is really going on? Why is it that I have all these material things and I'm still miserable in my life?
Well, I know that a lot of people with questions, where are some of the truthful answers? You mentioned one book, The Gods of Eden, that you felt really strongly about. What other sources are there that you feel that we have access to, aside from our inner selves, which is actually the best place to probably begin looking? But are there other starting points that people can use that you know of?
I mentioned Gods of Eden. George Andrews' books, E.T.s Among Us. There's a lot of information in there that not only deals with the E.T.s, but also the world political government, which right now is very dangerous for humanity, because it's part of the Great Plan. It's part of their regressive alien plan to keep us in jail. Okay, do not pass go, but keep us in jail. Oh God, suddenly I draw a blank.
Okay, just as you think about it, interject it into the conversation.
Okay.
You mentioned throw the television out. Are television programs conditioning our youth into accepting these hostile beings, do you think? Or is that just human beings doing anything for a buck?
I don't necessarily know. I don't know. But the violence is desensitizing. Violence is just a way of life now. We've been taught that. We've been programmed that violence is just a way of life. So when we see really violent acts, oh, that's too bad. Well, honey, what's on Channel 7? Or what movie are we going to rent tonight? That's what it's come to. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. There is no reason that any of this has to occur at all. It really doesn't. And a lot of it is the responsibility of the people. Because if the producers in Hollywood are going to make movies like this, and we're going to go and buy the tickets, well, they're going to be motivated for the buck to continue to make these kind of movies. Where if they spend $20 million and nobody buys a ticket, they won't be making those kind of movies. So it comes back to people taking personal responsibility for what they think, what they want to believe, and what it is that they want to create.
Do the Andromedans really feel that we'll be able to reach that window?
Right now it's undecided. And that's the scary part. They don't know.
What would help push it forward?
I don't know. I really don't know. Except for just, start listening to people that are talking. Start really paying attention to what's going on. My grandfather used to have a saying, believe nothing that you hear and half of what you see. I wouldn't believe a thing that comes out of Washington, D.C. In fact, it's my own personal belief that this next election that's coming up next year in November, that every American should march on Washington, D.C. and should fire every single person that's there. They have run this country into the ground. They have totally sold us out to the United Nations for a buck, for the debt. And, even the monetary system, it's just a belief system. We could change that tomorrow if we wanted to. I mean, we're so intelligent, we could create something different. But we're believing, we've got to have this money. Do you know that we're the only race in our galaxy where people starve, that people are homeless? It's such bull. It doesn't have to be like this. If you're alive and you're on a planet and other civilizations, even the draconian races, they take care of their own. They don't sell out each other like we do here. They don't throw somebody in the street because they don't have a paper, which is really what it is. The only value on it is what we believe it is. They just don't have that. They don't let children starve. They don't feed grain to cattle that feed 20% of the population and let the other 25% that need the grain starve. It's unconscionable. They would never even think to do that. But we do it here. For bucks. For money. For power.
That's part of that conditioning process that's been going on 5,700 years.
That's part of it. But the responsibility is that there are people that know what is going on, and they play the game anyway. They don't have the courage to say, look, folks, let's deal with the realities here. We don't have a guy that's strong enough in office as president to stand up and say, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, we've really been sold out. That there are forces within our government, like what Kennedy tried to do, that just flat out want to destroy the United States because we're too good, because we have too much. Instead of raising the consciousness and the life, everyday life, what's the word I'm looking for? A standard of living. Instead of raising the standard of living that we have globally, they would rather just destroy the United States, destroy our standard of living, so that we're comparable to everybody else. So now everywhere is a third world nation, and that's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it for power, for greed. We're selling out our own, and something's got to be done.
Could you describe the human military bases on the dark side of the moon, Mars, and the Mars probes as draconians, and how the Alpha draconians fit into this scenario?
The Mars probes, the Russian and the U.S. one, they're gone. They were destroyed. They're history. There's no secret here about, it's taking pictures privately. And it doesn't matter whether you believe that or not. It's history. Okay? March of '89, the Russians took pictures. Mars was invaded. We had a human colony there of 300,000, so I'm told. One was underground, one was above ground, Adam and Eve. They're conquered. They're being taken over. The human beings that are from Earth, that volunteered or were kidnapped to go there, are in deep trouble. Many of them have already been eaten. Some of them have already been killed. There is nothing we can do here as a race to help them.
So Mars was conquered by the Alpha Draconians.
That's right. They came in. There's 100,000 of them there. They have approximately 2,111 scout craft there. They're in an area underground that is 64 square miles, known on Mars as the area of Tempe Terra. That's where their base is. It's an ancient base that they had. It's over 1 million years old, and the last time it was in full bloom was 317,000 years ago.
Now, if we begin to train all our telescopes on that, are we going to be able to see activity going on there?
I suppose that we would. I have a feeling that they already are seeing incredible amounts of activity, but they're not allowed to say it. They're just not allowed to say it. Nor, who's going to want to jeopardize going to jail, being ridiculed, being fired, giving up everything they have to come up and say, well, I'm an astronomer, and I was looking at Mars, and I saw alien craft, and I know there's a base there, and it's being conquered by reptilian aliens. Who's going to have the guts to come up and say it? Nobody in the power elite. Nobody wants to blow their mortgage.
But somebody's going to have to, right?
Yes.
But eventually. It's going to be too late by the time they do it. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes. And that's exactly what the Andromedans are thinking. You see, there are people probably saying, well, God, why don't they just come down and save us? There's a lot to that. Number one, if we're rescued, we don't permanently evolve ourselves. Number two, we won't take responsibility. If something goes wrong, we can always blame it on them. Number three, it doesn't just change our reality, it changes their reality as well. Number four, the Andromedans and most of the other benevolent races, they don't want to have to come down here and babysit us. That's not their job. It's not their job at all.
Now, in the way you told me...
And number five, let me just add this. Look at how we've treated our Earth. Look at how we've trashed it ourselves. They're like, why should we come down here and help you when you don't want to even help yourself? Or even make the effort? The cleaning up the planet, we're giving to government bureaucracies. Well, here's $3 billion here. There's $10 billion there. Here's the super fund to clean up toxic waste, $20 billion. And the place is getting worse. That's not the problem. The problem is on an individual level, on an individual basis. Just don't create plutonium anymore. Just don't create styrofoam anymore. Just tell the industries, the corporations, because we're the ones who control it. We're the ones buying the products. We won't buy it unless you fix it. End of story. Period. We need to change it. It's our planet. We are the bulk of humanity. It isn't the corporations. It isn't the Fortune 500. It isn't the Committee for 300. And it isn't the Trilateral. We could fire all of them if we had to. Period. But it's coming together and it's doing something about it. And it's going to have to be grassroots, and people are going to have to start doing it soon.
Are these leaders going to, if we do raise up and do a grassroots uprising, when they order the military to quell that like they do at Kent State or any other political demonstration?
They probably will try. They probably will try. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But you know what? Let's take an example of the American Revolutionary War. 4% of the population of the colonies actually rose up and fought the British. Only 4%. The rest stayed home, stayed in the pubs, drinking ale, doing whatever, and waited to see who would end the war, to see who would win. And then when we won, everybody wanted to take credit for it. But it was really only 4%. Those heroes. And those 4% changed the face of the world. Well, 210, 12 years, whatever it is now, we're right back at the same place where we're being called to do exactly the same thing.
But the paradox here, Alex, would be then that if we begin to war against ourselves, that's going to exactly fuel the whole fire that's going on.
Maybe for a brief time it would. Until one side surrendered or saw the light. Do you know much about the New World Order? Do you know that they're building concentration camps to put millions of people in? Do you know that the United Nations has got 300,000 troops in the United States right now that they're going to use to confiscate weapons? And they're sending our active military troops out of the United States so they won't be here when this happens? Are you aware that that's going on? Do you know that just off the coast of just south of the border in Veracruz, there are 300 tons of Soviet military equipment ready to invade? I mean, this is that there are states actually wanting to secede from the Union. Yes. There are 9 different regions. The United States has already been designated to be split up. They're getting ready to totally dismantle the United States of America. And the only real part of the United States of America, and I get so angry with this, is Washington, D.C., 68 square miles. That's really all that is the United States. We are in the Republic of Arizona. People in California are in the Republic of California. It is those separate republics that make up a United States. Washington, D.C. has totally manipulated everything. We're no longer the United States, what the forefathers founded. It isn't that at all. And in 1992, the Congress approved the UN Charter. Well, what people aren't aware of, because it wasn't printed in the press, in the newspapers, in our controlled media, is that because it's a treaty, it supersedes the Constitution of the United States. The UN Charter is now the law of the land, not the Constitution anymore. And in the UN Treaty, Articles 55 and 56, look it up, folks, prove me wrong, state that the United States Congress no longer has to abide by the U.S. Constitution. As of 1992, the United States of America ceases to exist. They just haven't told the people yet. And they're not going to tell them until after they have outlawed all weapons, after they have totally regulated the Second Amendment and taken everybody's firearms away, so you can't fight, so you can't stand there and be free anymore. This is all part of the plan. This is why the Andromedans are so strong about trying to make the awareness here in the United States, because not only does it control media, but there are some incredibly strong spiritual essences here, people here, and we did this no less than 200 years ago, and many of the souls that were there then have incarnated again, and they're here. Jefferson is alive, their soul. Franklin's alive. Kennedy's back. Bobby Kennedy's back. Martin Luther King. Andrew Jackson, Lincoln, they're all back in physical form. They've all incarnated, they're all here in the United States. Because right now, this is where the battle is, between light and dark. You've got the Greys over us, you've got the reptilians underneath us, and between us you've got humanity of the human. You've got the American people, all of the world, but you've got humanity sandwiched in the middle, wondering what the hell is going on here. Let's talk for another 10 more minutes.
Okay. What is the ultimate agenda then of the Alpha Draconians in relation to Earth and to this part of the galaxy?
They do not want our galaxy to move into fourth and fifth density consciousness, because they lose complete power.
But it will anyway, won't it?
Not necessarily. There are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. There's no guarantee that Earth is going to go into fourth or fifth density. There's no guarantees that the entire galaxy is going to get there. Because if that were the case, they would probably just leave us alone and not give a damn what was happening here. No. You see, the draconians are third density. They're physical just like us. They can only move into fourth density by mechanical means. If we move into fourth and fifth density, they've lost their playground. They've lost control of what they want to control. So they're fighting like hell, trying to hold everything back. Because if they can hold everything back, then again, it's a form of power, of control.
Now,
it's such a mess.
Alex, how do the Andromedans plan to remove the Alpha Draconians? You said they're the bullies who are the strongest. Can they not be?
Apparently, the universe has created its own way of doing that, and maybe this is a good place to end. In the beginning, and here's the history of our universe, where it was created. The Big Bang Theory is essentially right in its simplicity. But apparently, what happened was, as vibrations, as the universe starts to excel in light, this way. There are pockets, and you have to look at it as a holographic projection of light. When you put a shadow into a light, it creates a variance of the light. Well, apparently what happens is things that don't ascend or choose to take higher consciousness, they get very, very heavy in weight or in light, whatever you want to call it. And as everything starts to exceed up, bulges, dips in light are created, in frequency are created. And what happens is negativity forms because of its weight, its heaviness, forms into these pockets. Well, what happens is they form a sac. And eventually what happens is those sacs break. And because everything is spirit and nothing is ever wasted, they form, when they explode, they cast themselves out and they form another universe. They create a space for them to continue. Well, that's how our black holes are. That's how they were formed. Those black holes, if we could get through them, would be to another universe. They're portals. And it would just explode out. Well, that's how our universe was created. Well, because of this new energy that's being formed, pockets of resistance are now being formed all through the universe. And in our galaxy, it's right now between us and Sirius.
So the way that the Andromedans plan to remove the Alpha Draconians would be
is basically to try to contain them, and their own energy themselves will suck them into a place of darkness so they can move out into another place. The Greys, the Orion groups, this is going to happen. It's happened before. They know it's happening now, and this is why everybody feels this intense energy. Things are suddenly really starting to increase. And it's simply because it is increasing.
So at a prior time, then, they were sucked out of another universe into Alpha Draconis? Is that basically essentially what happened?
They were sucked from wherever they were into another universe. Somehow that universe, or the beings in that universe, wherever they came from, said, we got to get rid of these guys. And they literally brought them here from their universe and dumped them and said, boom, this is where you are. Because they came here in physical form, which means they had to have been brought here. They didn't evolve like all the other life forms here have evolved. They were brought here in full physical form, which means they were created someplace else and dumped here and said, your history.
Well, someplace else, then, there's some very irresponsible people.
Well, maybe at some point in our eternal history we'll be able to address that issue. But for right now, we need to address our own issues.
Okay, let's go to the World Club then to end this up. And future events. According to the Andromedans, mankind has been manipulated for 5,724 years. Human agents must have participated in this throughout history. Who are some of the major players in this deception? You mentioned Hitler and the Giza intelligence.
Most of the pharaohs, most of the ancient Egyptian gods. I mean, there's so many. I couldn't honestly tell you. I mean, history is chock full of it. I think what people need to do is go back and look at what we call mythology and really start giving it a second look. Richard Thompson, in his book, although I've not read it, but I've heard others talk about where he delves into the history of things. And it's also important to remember that just because it's history doesn't mean it's accurate history. Because it has been proven over and over and over again, whoever wins the war rewrites history. They write it to their benefit, to glorify themselves. And it doesn't mean that that's really what happened. And according to the Andromedans, our next major leaps in consciousness are going to come from science and archaeology. It isn't going to come from any spiritual leader or teachings. It's going to come from someone to say, you know what? Here's the proof. This is true. This is reality. And I don't know what this stuff is. We can't prove that. And it's time we really start paying attention. Maybe at a future time we can share more or do another interview or something.
In a specific way, please describe in detail what the World Club is and who comprises it, and offer some specific examples of how they're controlling the rest of us. The banking circles, maybe?
Yeah, it all evolves around money. The World Bank, International Monetary Fund. I mean, they've got the whole world in debt. Governments are giving away their mineral rights in perpetuity. The United States government is now in a position to declare a national state of emergency, suspend the Constitution of the United States, and nationalize. And the reason they will have to nationalize is because our debt far exceeds any ability to pay it back.
So who are the collectors? What countries are the collectors?
It's not a country. It's a group of men. It's a group of human beings.
It's a group of human beings.
Right. The aliens don't need money. They don't need an American Express card.
So if the rest
it's a man-made thing.
If the rest of us simply say, we're not paying back the debt, that's it, we're starting over, you can forget your whole system, then we can erase that whole thing and start over.
That's right. If we had a real president in office, and Kennedy was probably really the last one, what he should do is just go on TV and spell it all out. Surround himself with people that maybe he can trust to protect his life. You should get on television before Congress and all the houses, the House of Representatives, in front of everybody, and spend 3 hours and give everybody a real education. Number one, the Federal Reserve is private. Number two, our debt isn't real. Number three, we've gotten ourselves into this big mess because past presidents sold us out for comfort and for money, and apologize. And then what he ought to tell, and just say that I'm nationalizing all the banks under the United States Treasury. We're going back to a silver standard, just like the Constitution says, and give everybody an opportunity to get back on track here, to maintain our standard of living and just start healing, And then the next thing I would say is, or make sure if there were any POWs alive, that they came back home. And I would start healing all of that crap. The fact that, that our POWs were sold out because of a debt, because of $3 billion, when we've wasted $3 billion or a promise to Vietnam, when we've wasted that kind of money on such stupid things as studying the sexual habits of a tsetse fly or frogs mating. I mean, it's unconscionable that we've allowed our government to do this.
Alex, we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's see if we can do some real brief answers to some of these last couple things, just real brief. The United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union, according to your sources, have been building secret technologies and bases on Earth, the Moon, and Mars for some time. Where are these bases to be found on the Moon?
Where are they?
Yeah.
They're on the dark side.
And do you know what the locations are, what they're called?
Yes. One is under Jules Verne. God, I wish I had those notes in front of me. Let's come back to that.
Okay. Have they told you anything about Area 51? Or Dulce, New Mexico?
Yeah, there were a lot of stuff there. The actual underground base is not underneath Arcoleta Mesa. It's actually 20 miles to the northwest. That's just an entrance point in and out.
This is Area 51?
This is in New Mexico, Dulce.
Dulce, okay.
It's not exactly right there. As far as Area 51, yes, there's a lot of stuff that was going on there, but a lot of that has been moved, and it's now in New Mexico, in the Sandia, underneath the Sandia Laboratory.
Diego Garcia Island.
Diego Garcia Island, there's a base there. Pine Gap. Diego Garcia Island, there's anti-gravity anomalies there, and this is how they were able to blow a lot of equipment into space without using rockets, and then they would have the UFO-type craft, which we built from technology we were given. They would hook a tow chain to it, and like a tow barge, just tow it to the moon.
Okay, and you mentioned...
And it runs, and the equipment that's there is run on free energy, stuff that was built that was created in the 1920s, that we've been absolutely not privy to. We haven't had to pump 1 gallon of oil out of the ground since the late 1920s. They've had free energy, but because of money, they've be controlled. They've allowed us to pollute the environment, to devastate the oceans because of petroleum products when we don't need it for money.
Which brings us briefly to Alternative 4.
When the Martian base fell, when the Martian base fell, the world government, those elite, figured out, well, we don't have any place to go now. The moon is not set up for long-term habitation, where Mars is and could be. So what happened was, when it fell and they knew we couldn't get there, they figured, well, we got to do something about here, because we have nowhere else to go. So I was told by the Andromedans that these men who think they're God had to come up with another alternative, which was they thought that they could create a controlled polar shift by detonating nuclear weapons or cobalt weapons underneath the South Polar ice cap, causing it to slip, which would cause the poles to slip. And within a 24-hour period, you would completely drown 83 to 85% of the population.
So the Andromedans said that they will not allow this.
It isn't going to happen. If the Earth is going to do it, it'll be done by her will, in a natural way. And that is a possibility in our future.
What is the primary message of the Andromedans?
Grow up now. Open your eyes. Open your ears. Take responsibility for your life. Take responsibility for your planet, and realize this is your home, this is your race, and that if you are sincere in making the effort to evolve, they will meet us halfway. But they're not going to come in here and do all the work for us. Their single most important thing is, and I'll go back to that little saying, the love that you withhold is the pain that you carry. We have got to start coming together as a race. We have got to stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated.
What can an average person do? I mean, how can we reach out to the Andromedans?
Prayer, meditation. Everybody has their own way of praying or whatever. And again, I want to stress this: the Andromedans can help, but they're not God. They're not our saviors. We need to be our own saviors. We can ask them for guidance and help, but they're not God. Period. Don't worship them. Don't worship anybody. Worship the God inside of you.
What will happen to those human beings who do not make the jump?
They'll go somewhere else.
And what will happen to those beings who do make the jump after the jump?
They'll move into 4th and 5th density. And those of us who survive this incredible ordeal that we're about to really experience will become new teachers, and we'll be able to go to different worlds and teach what we know, and be able to teach other evolving civilizations what not to do and how not to get themselves in trouble. And we have an incredible future if we can get through that. If 10% of the population of the planet can really get it together, it'll create what is called the 100th monkey syndrome. And suddenly 11, 12, 13% people will just start getting it. And it's going to take 10%. That's 500, 600 million people right now. And it starts on an individual basis. the government's not going to tell you. God, we could be in. They're going to play out the second coming. They're going to try to present a savior. They're going to project holographic images in space and say we're here to save you. They're going to do mock battle. They're going to screw with us big time. Sorry, I slipped out that word. And folks, we just got to start paying attention. Don't take anything at face value. Make them prove it. Whether you believe a word I'm saying, it doesn't matter. If somebody tells you that this is truth, make them prove it. If it's real, it'll stand up to scrutiny. If it isn't, it won't. Because the truth can always stand on its own. It doesn't need help, and it doesn't need lies to stand up. And let's end it there. Thank you for this time. It's been a real honor for me.